Representative Adam Smith of Washington State, thank you so much for joining us. We just heard from the Energy Secretary, who said pain at the pump will be temporary as the conflict will come to an end in the next few weeks. Secretary Hegseth, meanwhile, said that the war is about to surge dramatically. What's your expectation as far as the length of this war?
We really don't know. And it's in part because the goals are not clear and the means to achieve those goals are not clear. Broadly speaking, they want to degrade Iran's ability to wage war, their missile ability, their proxy ability. And so they're working on that. But how far is it going to have to be degraded before success is declared? I mean, keep in mind, Israel and Iran were in a 12-day war less than a year ago, in which Israel did substantial damage to Iran's ability to inflict pain on the region. They also went after Hezbollah and Hamas and other groups. The Assad regime fell in Syria, all reducing Iran's ability for malevolent behavior in the region. How much more do you have to reduce it, and at what cost? And when it's done, you know, we're not necessarily ending this long-term conflict with Iran because there doesn't seem to be a particular plan to change the regime and put a regime in that is more likely to take a different path.
You just mentioned at what cost, and I do want to ask, how concerned are you about the cost, not only with regard to dollars, but potential lives?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about both, and the disruption to the Middle East and the disruption to the global economy. You saw the impact it had on Americans who are in the region desperately trying to get home. Look, I mean, President Trump has been very aggressive about using the military, certainly in Iran, but we waged a 3.5-month war against Yemen. The boat strikes in Latin America are ongoing. We've bombed Nigeria. There's a cost to that, both in terms of money and the impact it has on the defense budget and our ability to meet our national security needs, and also in disruption. And certainly this is the most disruptive war in the Middle East that we've seen in a couple generations. So I think that cost is going to be high, and thus far the administration hasn't been completely transparent about what that cost is.
We know that the war powers vote failed in the House today after it failed in the Senate yesterday. If the conflict does go on beyond 90 days, under the War Powers Act, troops must come home. Will Congress vote to authorize force?
Yeah, 60 days, actually, not 90. Yeah, it's the way it's supposed to work. I don't see this president paying attention to that law. Many of us will continue to put pressure on Congress to have a vote on whether or not this war should continue and to stick to the Constitution that says the war shouldn't be allowed to go forward without congressional authorization. But no, I don't see them making a dramatic change in 60 days. And I think the next couple of weeks are going to be crucial.
Is it 60 to 90? That's my understanding, that you have the potential to go until 90 days.
Yeah, my understanding was that at the 60-day point, you then had to either say that hostilities had ceased or get congressional approval. But, you know, I'll leave that to the lawyers. At any rate, yeah, at some point under the War Powers Resolution, or War Powers Act that was passed into law in the 1970s, congressional approval is required. But the president hasn't really been following the Constitution or the law to date, so I don't expect him to 60 or 90 days from now.
What's your biggest concern as we sit here tonight?
My biggest concern in the short term is the unexpected, you know, the substantial loss of life in the region, massive disruptions. We already lost 6 service members in this fight. Might we lose more? My biggest concern is for the lives of our service members. In terms of broader policy, my biggest concern is that we fight this for 4, 6 weeks, 8 weeks maybe. Iran is degraded. The regime's still in place. Everything goes back down, and then Iran just stays and continues to be what they were before. So at great expense, we haven't made progress towards the ultimate goal. President Trump is fond of saying, you know, Iran started this war, I'm just ending it. He's not really ending it. President Trump is escalating it. You know, whether or not that ends it at some point, I don't know. But the one thing we do know right now, this is the most dramatic escalation in the conflict between Iran and U.S. that we've ever seen.
And just in the last few seconds before you go, of course, you saw the news about the termination of Kristi, Noem. Your reaction to the direction of the agency and the choice of Senator Markwayne Mullin?
Yeah, I think the problem here is not just Kristi. These are Donald Trump's policies. Donald Trump's policies that are violating the rights of Americans all across the country. We saw it in Minneapolis. 2 American citizens killed by ICE agents, effectively murdered. We've seen the civil rights violated, people, you know, dragged out of cars, homes invaded without warrants. That's the problem. Now, Kristi Noem had a unique way of implementing that. Many of the things she did were problematic, but the policies are the problem. So I think Congress still needs to pass laws to rein in what ICE is doing and protect the rights of all Americans. Yes, we need immigration enforcement, and I give the president credit for having secured the border, but now he is violating the rights of Americans on a day in and day out basis. Congress should act to regulate that and rein in the abuses that ICE is raining down upon us.
Democratic Congressman Adam Smith, we thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.